And you'll notice our attempted rebrand that Andy said looks a lot like American Idol. So now I guess I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that again. I was looking for something that was more all-encompassing of everything this show is offering now. I didn't realize it would be.
I think it's just the center logo. I think that's what's throwing it off.
You're probably right. Although if Simon Cowell would like to invest in the show, we will happily do whatever he likes us to do.
I will suckle at that teat.
Can you imagine if Paula Abdul got to guess? We would not be able to form words. We would just be like the entire time. Welcome to Off Day, everybody. I'm Jim Christopher, Andy Tom Cheston here. We got a little bit of sports, a little bit of pop culture, a little bit of politics for you today. Andy, I want to start with a little college baseball. Home stretch for everybody. Of the three teams vying for the SEC championship, Georgia is obviously in the best position with that awkward game-and-a-half lead. Texas has a bit easier schedule than A&M does, but all three are definitely in the catbird seat to win the SEC regular season, which on this show, even if one of us does roll up and wins the SEC tournament, we acknowledge that is the thing that measures how good your team is, if whether you win the regular season or not.
Yeah, because it's not about getting hot for a weekend, which is ultimately what a tournament is about. And you can stretch that to Major League Baseball because it applies. That means you got hot for a month. You're hot at the right time. You hear that all the time. For A&M, it is absolutely gut punch time. You hope they step up. But this is really.
Hold on a second, Andy. Your battered Aggie syndrome just came out. You didn't say gut check time. You said gut punch time.
I said what I said. So starting with the series at Texas, and we talk about this all the time, there are no easy weekends in SEC baseball play. There just aren't. There are easier weekends. But starting with that series against Texas that was abbreviated because of weather, we are playing a run of 6 series of teams, 5 of which are going to be hosting regionals based on D1 baseball's current projections. These next 4 weeks, starting this weekend, Florida is projected to be an 8 seed hosting. Next weekend is Auburn, is a 12 seed hosting. Week after that is Ole Miss, which is a 14 seed hosting. And then Mississippi State, a lowly 2 seed, but still the 18th team in the field. It is, and it just continues. From there, you go to the SEC tournament, which you're going to play all these same teams again. And then you get to, hopefully, Omaha. It's just, it's nonstop. If you love college baseball, this is the time to watch. And if you love high-quality college baseball, seriously recommend tuning into an SEC game. If you can't get that, I guess an ACC game would work for like 6 of their teams.
Yeah, it was funny. Like I just found we were hanging out with my mom last weekend, and I just started throwing on random baseball games after the Texas-Alabama game, and I had one of those old man moments of marveling at the fact that, I mean, I think for a minute I watched Notre Dame play Navy. No, it was even worse than that. It was like Bucknell playing Navy or something. But yeah, it's going to be.
A&M had a weather delay last weekend, or some schedule delay, I don't remember what it was, but it was switched to West Virginia Virginia Tech and Boston College in Fenway Park.
Oh, that's
not
fun.
High quality. It was a fun venue. It's not high quality baseball.
Yeah. But yeah, Texas's gauntlet's obviously a lot easier. I mean, they go to Vanderbilt, which has traditionally been a baseball power, but has not been great the last couple of seasons. Again, I don't think Tony Kemp is rolling out.
And they are one of the first 4 out right now, according to D1 baseball.
And then obviously Mississippi State, that's going to be very tough, but at least it's at the Dish. Might try to go to Sunday's game. That on the 2nd of May, Jessica and we're going to my first opera. I'm very excited. Let's take that, Timothy Chalamet.
See, this is where we have parted ways a little bit, not because of opera, which is wonderful, but evidently because you went to Charles Romeo for a while instead of St. Ambrose all the way through, we used to get dragged to the opera once a year.
Did you really?
Yes, it's a field trip.
Oh, I'd see. Yeah, because I didn't make it to St. Ambrose until Middle school. So I was at St. Charles, and then we were out of Houston we were out of the Houston area for a couple of years. So yeah, this will be my first time, and I'm going to see La Boheme, and all I keep thinking about, and only Andy and like 4 other people will get it, is that was the tickets that Dan Aykroyd had on him in Trading Places when he got arrested, and Frank Oz goes, "Oh, it's an opera." Very
La Boheme.
La Boheme. It's an
La Boheme, 2 tickets.
Yeah. But pretty exciting news based much on your advice for Longhorn fans that are watching. I'm actually going to be going to Texas at Knoxville, the penultimate SEC season of the year, series of the year. Pretty excited to get out there. Andy, have you done any road tripping like that? Any tips? Particularly visit. I know that you've got kin from that area.
My wife has kin, so I am not by blood related. And frankly, like most Americans, I don't want to dig too far into the American side of my heritage because you only go back so far before, you're from the South, and there's some uncomfortable truths that you have to deal with. I concentrate on the Polish side, which owned no one ever.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm half Polish, half Irish, so everybody that I knew, we all got kicked around, man. There was
owned some chickens at some point.
Yeah, we were, outside of beating your wife, that's all that really was happening.
We've been to the Knoxville area a couple times. I think the largest Buc-ee's in America is in Sevierville, which is on the way to Dollywood and Gatlinburg and those kind of places. But you go a little about an hour past that, and you get to Johnson City. You get to Kingsport, which is lovely. If Fun Fest happens to be going on while you're there, I would recommend making the drive. It's a good time, and it's a beautiful part of town. You're right up against the Appalachian Mountains or the Smokies. I know they call them something different, but it's the same damn mountain range. Look at a map. No, it's the Appalachians in Virginia and North Carolina. I don't give a shit. It's the same rocks.
Do you think I'll see any haulers?
You will definitely see some haulers. And if you go to Gatlinburg, you're going to see things like a Titanic restaurant that's shaped like a boat, pointed straight up and down.
Okay, I have to now go find this thing.
Yeah,
this is more important than the game.
Knoxville, I would take a road trip to Gatlinburg. It's worth it for just the people watching and seeing stuff. But yeah, it's that's a great part of the country and a great part of town, or a great part of Tennessee. East Tennessee is beautiful. That is someplace, despite the political climate in Tennessee, that we would seriously consider relocating to, just because it's gorgeous.
Yeah, well, very excited, and for those of you watching, the turmoil was whether I go see the Reds and the Astros, but it's a dicey trip for Jessica. I like to do MLB parks with her, and I don't know. I feel like this Longhorn team feels kind of like it could be special, so I kind of wanted to get some, and I've grown more interested in the college baseball road trip. We talked before about how I didn't really know if it fit the show, and I don't know that it does, but I've seen a game at North Carolina, the Tar Heels. It's a cute little ballpark. I mean, and that whole campus is kind of cool because it's really carved into the forest. Excited. So I'll be at Louisville Slugger Museum the day before in Kentucky. Then I'll be at the Louisville Bats that night, and then off to Knoxville.
Yeah, and I would say Knoxville is a true college town. The whole city, even though it's a mid-sized city, is dedicated to all things University of Tennessee. So if you can get used to the safety code orange, it will be difficult for you. It's fun when you're in a town where the reason for the town is the school, and they kind of embrace each other. And then Knoxville, Tennessee is a beautiful campus. So you'll have fun there. And they've invested a lot of money in their baseball program over the last 5 to 10 years. So it's a nice facility, from what I understand.
Yeah, again, just
the other side of not going to Cincinnati for you is, frankly, we've seen the Reds beat the shit out of good Astros teams for the better part of the last 5 years. And this is not a good Astros team, so Lord knows what's going to happen there. I assume Ellie De La Cruz will somehow hit a cycle all 3 games.
All 3.
And then go back to hitting 250 against the rest of the league.
I assume he will too. It's unreal, man, what's going on with this Astros team. Jordan is having a series that's, quite frankly, I saw a lot of people predicting, and I couldn't understand why. The Athletic had several headlines: is Bagwell's home run record at risk, and this and that. And I like I felt like, okay, I mean, I guess why you're writing it, but what of all the arbitrary things to be worried about, but he's really having a season that's like otherworldly. And they put up a graphic, MLB Network tweeted out a graphic that he's something like fifth all time for of wins created plus for left-handed bats in the history of the game this far into their career. Like Babe Ruth is like number one and Jordan's fourth. He hit that 2-run home run against Cleveland to basically end up being the game winner because, shockingly enough, the Astros found pitching.
Cy Young candidate Peter Lambert. Are you talking about Cy Young candidate Peter Lambert? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, I better put that in mind. But they, but that ball, I mean, it's effortless and violent is the only way I would describe Jordan's swing right now.
I don't give a shit about the Astros home run record, and I know that's all that ESPN can manage to talk about when it comes to baseball is home runs or Ohtani. Those are the two topics.
Well, I got another topic for you afterwards that's going to annoy you. But
what I do think that's interesting is that he is, if he can stay locked in for an entire season, you would be putting him in the argument of surpassing the best season in Astros baseball history, which was Jeff Bagwell's 1994 season.
Yes.
Or he added 364. Again, we kind of lucked out because of the strike. Hate to say it that way, but Bagwell was hurt the day before the stoppage started and probably would not have maintained the momentum for the vote to win that MVP that he did. But that season was the best season of baseball I've ever seen by one person in an Astros uniform. Jordan is giving the vibes that he could do something special like that. And unfortunately, with this team, he may have to for them to get to 500. Because I still see a whole bunch of this week with Cleveland notwithstanding, I still see this team being struggling to get to 500 unless they can solve the pitching. And there's going to be a lot of 9-8 kind of games. And unfortunately, we're going to be on the wrong side of those because we still don't have a back end of a bullpen.
I was telling a good friend of mine who's a Braves fan, and the Braves are having the opposite season of the Astros, where in many ways their roster is just as unsettled as ours is, but it's all coming together for them. Like they are the second best team in the National League. They will lose to the Dodgers because no one's going to beat the Dodgers. That's a foregone conclusion. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, and he listens to the show occasionally, and he's like, well, your prediction wasn't right. And I was like, well, no, our prediction was right on as far as what the record would be. We just thought we would lose 3-2, not 9-7. And let me tell you, 9-7 sucks a lot more than losing 3-2.
Yep.
Because how many of those 9-7s? I think I did the count, Andy. The Astros have lost 16 games. They had 4-run leads in at least 9 of. I'm sorry, they scored 4 runs in at least 9 of those games. You should win those 9 games. And one of those, a couple of those games, they had 4-run leads going into the 8th.
Yep.
And lost them,
including this week against Cleveland. I don't know
and I won't
why.
talk about that in specific because
I don't know why, and I know you're going to get to it, but I can tell you my reaction because we were out doing something. Our house is being painted, so we're going out to eat every night, which is woefully expensive. But I was kind of tracking on my phone and saw that we were up 4-2 going to the 8th, and I foolishly thought this was an Astros team of old that, we'll win this game, and did not look at my phone again until we got home.
Oh, wow. Well,
and then somehow they scored 6 runs.
I bring up to the podcast that I listen to about the Astros, I bring up the Crush City Pod with Chandler and Tyler Stafford. And then I bring up the shows H-Town Wheelhouse does a lot because they both brought up the same point. If you can't go to Abreu, so they lose that game because they go to King, who has been good this year, but the weekend, but the night before, no, it was not the night before, the night before that, he threw 40 pitches. If you can't go to Abreu, why is he on your team?
Yep. And it is getting to be that simple. He's not a real, if you're interested in getting something out of him this year, I'm not a DFA guy like a lot of Astros Twitter seems to be. Like anybody who disappoints you should just be DFA'd. Damn the roster. But I think he is legitimately to the point where he needs to be wearing a Space Cowboys jersey for about a month to figure some shit out. because he just doesn't have it this year. We can, other shows can talk more intelligently than I can, certainly, about velocity or pitch shape or all the things that he's not doing this year that he has done in years past. But I don't think we can afford, we being the Astros, afford to have him figure it out at the major league level, because he's just not doing it, and it's
so
costing
bad.
games.
He's not even He's not even getting lucky. Like,
No,
your best
they're
AAA
hammering
guy could
everything.
get lucky.
And ultimately, it's just as simple as this. He can't get his slider over the plate, which means his fastball is remarkably hittable. Because even though he throws 98, probably can get up to 100 if he really forces it up there.
It's straight.
It's a pitch. It's a batting pitch.
Yeah.
It is a batting practice pitch. It is straight over the damn plate with no break at all. And major league players, even bad ones, can hammer it. We've seen it all year long.
His fastball is only effective because it has such little movement when it's playing off his breaking ball, which has amazing movement, and they look the same coming out of the hand. But when they don't believe that your breaking ball is going to get thrown because it's not landing in the zone at all, they're just going to sit fastball, and then
you will eventually throw one because you can't get your other pitch over for strikes.
Or
you walk
the
entire. Yeah, you do that too.
Yeah, it's frustrating. You know, the lack of depth. Go ahead.
I mean, if you had told me literally 4 weeks ago that I would rather see Joey Ting pitching in a game than Brian Abreu, I would have told you were insane. But that's where we are right now. I would feel much more comfortable seeing Ting close games. Of course, we're going to make him a starter because we don't have any of those right now, too.
Yeah, they're going to make him a starter. They're going to try to stretch him out mid-season. Then he's going to get his shoulder hurt, and then we're going to be right back where we are.
And I don't know if they've watched his major league career so far. He's not been effective as a starter. He's effective in the bullpen. He's the only guy, one of the few guys that's effective in the bullpen. Brian King, he had a bad day, but it has been effective. But those guys are few and far in between. Why you're going to pull them out of one thing they're doing well and put them in a place they haven't succeeded is kind of beyond me at this point. And this is when we talk about the desperation moves, this feels like that. If that happens, that feels like a desperation move to me. Unless you're going to go true Tampa Bay Rays style, and everybody's we're going to have 10 guys. They're all going to throw. Well, I wish they all threw 100. That's what the missing part of this is. And they're all going to throw 2 innings, and we're just going to keep doing that until we figure it out. We don't have enough talent to do that, though, so it's not a great combination.
No, it's really not, and it's frustrating this product that, I mean, they're wasting an offensive season that I think the offense will taper off because eventually the injuries are going to rear their head. Like, everybody seems to be hitting.
I think you get Pena back, and that lengthens the lineup. I think and I'm loath to say this, I think you get Jake Myers back, and that lengthens the lineup. Loperfido seems to have an idea of how to be a major league hitter, so when he comes back, that's going to lengthen the lineup. Right now, we have a guy named Daniel and another guy named Dustin, and I don't know who they are, and I'm pretty sure neither of them were in camp with us in Florida.
They weren't on the team 4 days ago. They were literally,
but they're starting major league outfielders now.
Yeah. It's bizarre. And it's also just, I don't get how the front office could have been this unprepared for injuries based on what they dealt with last year. And it's almost as if the strategy in the offseason was, no way this happens again.
I think we are fair with Joe Espada, but I think we are realistic about Joe Espada's shortcomings as a manager. And he certainly has a piece of this, but the roster construction is 100% on Dana Brown, and Dana Brown has not built a competitive roster. And ultimately, if you're going to talk about the things that might cost Dana Brown his job sooner rather than later, it's going to become apparent to anyone paying attention that this is not a major league pitching staff.
Well, and in the first pick he made that rightly or wrongly, his entire legacy as a general manager riding on is Bryce Matthews, who by this point in time should be a contributing major leaguer, and he's a hole.
Yeah, and I hate to put that on Bryce Matthews' shoulders because realistically he was a reach at where we picked him. He was a infielder that we were going to try to turn into an outfielder, as I recall, or I might have that backwards, from Nebraska, who struck out a lot.
Yeah, like why he was the
Yep.
first pick, I don't get.
But guess what he does in Major League against Major League pitching? He strikes out a lot.
And then he runs into one every now and again. But you can only have so many of those guys on a roster, and
We don't play Arizona enough to keep him on the roster to just do that.
Yeah.
But God, when he's facing the Diamondbacks,
woo boy, look at him go. Look at him go. I did want to bring up, you and I think we talk often about this sort of national disrespect that comes from towards the Astros, and the Yankees are in town. And it might shock you to know that the Athletic, the weekend the Yankees are in town, have an article basically co-written by Chandler Rome, complaining about the fact that the Astros never opened the roof. And I just find it interesting because they even chose to use the quote from Aaron Boone complaining about the roof being the one time it was open, and that apparently would have reversed the fortunes of the Yankees in the 2022 ALCS. But I guess I'm just tired of everybody outside of Houston having an opinion about whether the roof should be open or not. I think it should be open more. But I do also know that even when it's not raining and the roof is open, the concourses are slick. It's gross to sit in there. Like, we live in a swamp. The roof is closed. Deal with it.
Yeah, I agree with you that the roof should be open more than it is. I don't know any reason that for most of your series in a normal year, I know we don't really have those weather-wise in the United States or I guess the world anymore, but in a normal year, your March, your April, and your September games should probably all have roofs open. I understand the heat of August and July, and God knows nobody wants there, but it's not necessarily the temperature, it's the humidity. When it's at 80+% humidity, like it's going to be this weekend, nobody wants that roof open.
Nobody.
Because it's not good for the players. It's certainly not fun for the fans. And ultimately, the roof is about the fans. How do I say this nicely without offending a bunch of people? Houston sports fans are pussies.
He came up with 9 way to say it, and then he said, "You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to say it like it is."
And I mean, but that ultimately what it is, because when Enron Field opened, and then it was Astros Field after Enron, they did open the roof more, and they did open the roof more in March, going into April and going into May. And you know what our fan base did? Complained like they were being murdered because it was too hot in the stadium. And there is always going to be a balance between the competitive product on the field and keeping people happy enough to keep buying tickets. And guess what being 10-16 means? People aren't happy about buying tickets. So you're going to do everything you can to keep them comfortable while they're there buying your $7 beers, which evidently there is one spot you can buy a $7 beer at Innovate Park. All the rest of them are 15, but I'm keeping that to myself. And it's probably Bud Light, but
as I've been planning my trips for the show, the MLB product, the Major League Baseball product, really has gotten prohibitively expensive. I mean, part of, I've got to get tickets to go to Cincinnati, not Cincinnati anymore. Now I guess Baltimore is the only one I have left to get tickets for. But we were looking at, I was going to go to Dodger Stadium this year when I'm up in LA for the Jaws exhibit. And the cheapest ticket, I think, was $75.
Mm-hmm.
Who can afford to do that? And what's going to end up happening is they're going to have this work stoppage. There's going to be a salary cap and then a salary floor, and then they're going to raise prices on. At some point, enough is going to be enough with how much things are costing. Yesterday, Jessica and I had to go to Sonic for dinner. We were just running late on something, and it was $26 for 2 people.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you, I was very surprised last night, and this has nothing to do with anything other than dinner. Like I said, we don't have a kitchen right now, so we've been eating out. We went to Chili's last night. I love Chili's.
You don't go to Chili's.
I don't like chain restaurants, almost period. But we went to Chili's. You want to know why I went to Chili's? Because I got chips and salsa, a hamburger, and a drink for $12.99.
That's the thing. The fast food restaurants are their prices are getting way more inflated than like we because our favorite Mexican place up here is the Texican Cafe. We could have eaten for the same amount that we ate at Sonic.
The two people ate for $30 last night. I that in 2026 is a bargain. I can't eat by myself at Dyken Park for $30.
No.
And that's before you start getting into an El Tiempo margarita. There are tickets in Dyken Park for $15. They're in the third base line, very, very top of the stadium. I think it's 100 seats that go for that price. Other than that, you're paying 75 to 100 to see a baseball game. When you start multiplying that out to a family of four, you're talking $500 easily just to get in the stadium, between convenience fees and parking and all the other stuff you have to do. Then if you want to eat and it's not Dollar Dog Night, you're another 500 easily.
Yeah.
So it's a tough proposition in a shit economy where you're watching a product that's not going to be really good for a while, it looks like, unless something dramatic happens with our pitching staff. And it's hard to swallow. And I know I sound like I make fun of my father all the time because he is very much of the generation. My parents used to give me a quarter and I could buy a movie ticket and jujubes and popcorn and a Coke and still have 35 cents left over. So you started with 25. How did that happen? But when we were kids, you could go to the Astrodome and sit in the outfield, a pretty decent outfield seats for $4.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I remember doing that my senior year of high school. Me and my buddies, including your brother, pulled a Ferris Bueller because we knew the strike was coming. So we went to a game. I think we might have gone to the game. Everything shut down, and it was $4 to sit in the outfield on the outfield wall.
And people being who they are, you get in for $4. You sit where you want to because I don't know if you're fighting a lot of crowds at that point.
No,
but it's like everything else. It hasn't. The prices have risen dramatically past the point of inflation or wage growth or any of the other problems that we have with real problems like housing and food and insurance and those kind of things. But it's just another symptom. And if it's a pastime and it's supposed to be enjoyable for people, people have to be able to get in the stadium to enjoy it.
It's funny though.
Playoff baseball is a hard watch. Baseball is something that you have on in the background on TV, but you're going to do 16 other things.
Or you're watching 3 games at one time. Like that's kind of what I tend to do. Like over the weekends, I have the Horns and the Astros up at the same time.
And it's enjoyable because we're baseball fans. Trying to get somebody who just kind of, all right, sure, that's a hard sell. Going to the baseball park is always going to a hockey game is always going to be more fun than watching it on TV. Any live, with maybe the exception of football, because you can see the game better.
Football is a made-for-TV event. I don't care what people think. What people think.
But baseball requires you to be at the park and smell the grass and be part of the experience. And if you make that experience out of touch for Americans, it's just going to continue to slowly erode away at your base.
And I think we talked about this before, is that these owners and the gatekeepers of baseball are deluding themselves because they see these TV revenues that I think are overinflated because content needs to be put on as somehow a sign that the sport is doing well. But I just don't think that it is. And I think it's a bubble and bubbles pop. And but it isn't even just that. Like I, for as much I don't think that the government should be getting involved in like sports and all that stuff. And I don't want to hear about his orangeness talking about fixing football because it's different than it was when he was a kid. If he was ever a kid, I just presume he was hatched that way. But there is a bipartisan investigation going on because apparently if you're an NFL fan, you spent about $2,000 last year to make sure you had all the streaming networks you needed to watch the games. Like it is getting to the point where they're going to drive all these sports off a cliff because the people you already can't afford to go to an NFL game. Nobody can afford to go. Right. How often? I mean, I know you're not the biggest Texans fan, but have you been to? I mean, how many times have you been to a game?
I might get to a game once every season or two, and it's usually because somebody handed me tickets. There has never been a thought in my brain that I'm going to go buy tickets for that game.
Yeah.
Because
how often do you get to College Station?
Not as often as I would like.
It's getting more and more expensive.
When they expanded the stadium, they added cheaper seats, but there were seats. The experience is geared, Kyle Field, frankly, for the suite owners. If you're in a suite, it is a fantastic experience. I have heard. Right. If you'd like to invite me, I can give you my email address at the end of the trip. And I know you can sit up in the nosebleed, you can sit in the end zone and part of that experience. And if I was in college, I might make more of an effort to do it, but it's just as easy for college sports, for college football especially, to sit on my couch and look at my 65-inch TV. And that's not even a brag anymore because they make 90-inch TVs
now. I was going to say, I was talking about that to my film students. They go, oh, yours is only 60 inches? Yeah, okay, it is. Rich kids.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I could have made one wall an entire movie screen. I chose not to. But it's just easier and it's clearer, and I don't have to worry about whether my glasses are clean or not, and if I can take them off and see better or not because I'm in my living room.
Yeah.
These are things old people care about. But yeah, the athletic experience for fans is becoming unattainable for the majority of fans, and it's catering towards the wealthy, the well-to-do, and the people who make really bad financial decisions, like people who host baseball shows.
That's us.
Until they change that tax code, though, enjoy your write-offs.
Well, but it is though. It's something that's becoming more and more of the narrative of it all, and I don't know why. Like, in full disclosure, guys, like those of you who are watching, like when I go buy tickets to the Orioles game, like Jim isn't paying for it. The show is, right, and there is a difference, and there is a revenue stream for the show. I'm not going to get into all of that, but even still, it's starting to feel like, is this a good use of those funds? And like I'm going to go to Baltimore. I do want to see all 30 ballparks, but I'd much rather go on a SeatGeek and get $12 tickets to go watch Texas play at Knoxville than go sit in Cincinnati on what everybody tells me is a beautiful ballpark. Like, it sucks that it's getting to that point where, because my wife can't go, it doesn't feel like it's worth the money to go to Cincinnati. And I'd rather pay $120 so we can both go than $65 for me to go by myself.
And this is part of our shared love for minor league baseball. I am lucky enough to get to travel for work a lot. I often have to go to towns that have, or at least adjacent to, minor league parks. And you can go to a baseball game and get a really good seat. And I am bougie, so I do need a good seat.
Totally.
But you can get a really good seat for $25.
$25 you're behind home plate, or for $50 you're in the little club thing above.
Yeah, with probably a buffet attached to that.
Yeah.
I mean, so there are ways to do that and still make money. So I think it comes down to the amount of money that the major league owners have convinced themselves they have to make. And I know we're in the period right now, April 24th, for the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be hearing nothing about how poor they are, which makes no sense considering the Padres just sold for what, $4 billion?
Just under $4 billion. Yeah. I was trying to put some money together to buy them for us. That was gonna be a little Christmas present for you. Here's a steak. There will be no steak.
But this is where the sanity test doesn't work, because every one of these owners is going to tell you how broke they are and how little money they make, if they make any money at all, and how it's probably losing their family's money and they're going to be destitute. But I can turn around and sell this franchise for $4 billion and have people lined up to want to buy them. Generally, people who have billions of dollars to spend don't buy things that lose money, with the exception of yachts.
Do you think the Astros would sell more right now than the Padres did?
I mean, it's pretty close.
Some of that's also the zip code, right? Like, that's part of it.
I mean, there's a lot of different factors. I think the Astros actually have a better television revenue stream than the Padres do right now, so that's part of the consideration of what you're buying. If I'm Jim Crane and I'm selling, am I selling just the team and the lease and that, or am I selling all the land I bought around the stadium? Because that's part of the factor too. So I think there's a lot of different variables, but I think the Astros are in a larger media market. They have a better television package. To me, that means there'd be a higher dollar attached to the franchise.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we could effort for the Forbes list and find out, but I'm 99% sure the Astros franchise is worth more than the Padres franchise right now.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about as we kind of get into some of our politics stuff before our entertainment stuff before we get out of here is we had made the joke last episode about who gets fired first, Pete Hegseth or Joe Espada. Kash Patel has obviously entered the chat.
Yeah, the dark horse is in the room.
Is in the room. But it feels like it feels like to me, and I know, like, I think we might differ on this a little bit, where I refuse to let me back up. I watched a video today that George Bush's kid, who has, I guess he's a host on the Today Show now, did with the 4 living presidents. And Jessica and I'm so embarrassed, Jess, because we could not remember who the 4th was. We kept thinking maybe they meant Trump, but no, Trump was not invited. So it was Obama, W, Clinton, and Biden. I keep forgetting. That's who I forgot. But talking about just the honor and the privilege that it was to be president in honor of the 250th birthday.
Biden was never president. It's fake news.
Huh?
Biden was never president. It's fake news.
Yeah, it's fake news. He definitely lost. Apparently, it's coming
still
out. That news is coming. And of course, I'm struck by how all of them talked about it being an honor and a privilege and the dignity of the office and all of those things. Our current guy doesn't, but it just feels like we're about to enter into the most tumultuous presidency, death rattle of a presidency that's definitely been in your and I lifetimes. And I know I think we're technically alive during Nixon, but you weren't like cognizant.
When you mean technically, it's like the abortion debate. I wasn't a fetus. I was actually alive.
That's what I mean. What I mean is you weren't cognizant of unless you came out.
I mean, it's pretty binary.
It really is.
So 1 or 0.
You know, I would say, Andy, I wasn't alive until I met my wife. I just assumed you felt the same. So there you go.
No, that's not true. I was alive before I met Jess. Yes, I was alive during Watergate.
Okay,
I don't
but
remember.
this has got to be.
I was alive when we left Vietnam.
But we've got to be, at least from an inner workings of the White House, this has to be the most tumultuous of our cognizant lifetimes.
The difference for me is no matter what you might have thought of the Clinton presidency, the Reagan presidency, the Nixon presidency, the Biden presidency, Obama, Bush, throw them all in there. There were always adults in the room. Even if you think W was an illiterate frat guy who his dad bought him an election, great. There were adults in the room steering him in the direction they thought the place was headed. The problem is the people who are doing the steering right now are podcast hosts. So let me put that in reference for you. That's you and I. Being the FBI director.
Except we're sober.
And by virtue of you serving our country, you're more qualified than Kash Patel is, but only marginally.
And my eyes look the same direction. Maybe that actually underqualifies me. I can't cover as much ground as one time.
But can you imagine Chandler Rome or H-Town Wheelhouse being in charge of the FBI? No, and no, they wouldn't pass a background check. Neither would Kash Patel, but he didn't have to take one.
And H-Town Wheelhouse and Chandler Rome probably are smart enough to not want the job.
Hey, this is fair. Although you get free use of a sex jet. Or is that Christy Nome?
That was Christy Nome.
I don't know who gets the sex jet now.
I don't know. Do they share the sex jet? These are the things we need to dive into. Who gets to keep the sex jet?
It'll be in a presidential library in Miami, I guess.
Oh God, do not sit on those couches. You talk about the seats at Minute Maid being sticky when the roof's open? No.
You're going to be issued one of those Dr. Evil silver suits to walk through.
But no, it has been just a train wreck of a time. And like, I'm not going to sit there and tell Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Joe Rogan, I think actually, I've never really listened, but I did some deep dive this morning. I think actually done a pretty good job of being consistent in his beliefs, but I'm not going to tell him you're late to the party, because whenever you get to this party, the party is that serious that I'm not going to just sit there and gatekeep and say like, well, you weren't here with us from the beginning and you don't need to be here now. But it does seem like everything seems to be fraying and falling apart. And it looks like this redistricting effort that Trump put in place is going to blow up in his face mightily and cause long-term damage to our democracy, but it's not going to help him. It's just fascinating to me how a guy who actually was pretty good at manipulating the situation his first term seems hilariously bad at it this go around.
Yeah, and the redistricting thing is really interesting beyond the hypocrisy that's happening now, because the same people who are crying about Virginia were cheering about Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there's always a tweet. You can pull it up from individuals about how, I mean, starting with and including the Washington Post, who decided that Texas wasn't that big a deal. It's not the end of democracy. And 3 days ago, Virginia is the end. What happened in Virginia is the end of democracy. Same guy wrote those op-eds. I think the scales are falling from people's eyes. Not enough and not fast enough for my taste, but I think it's happening. My worry at this point is not that there's not a shift at the midterms, or not that, the sane Republicans or Democrats can't put up good candidates for the next two elections to start weeding out some of this just blatant nonsense that has been foisted upon the American public. It's that we have irrevocably broken systems. Even if you can fix them, it's going to take decades upon decades to repair them. And what happens to us as a citizenry, what happens to our military, what happens to our space program, what happens to all those things in the meantime? Because there are some things that are fundamentally broken that are going to have to get fixed when it comes to spending, when it comes to the focus of what our federal government's doing, that mean other things are going to have to get taken away. And we can debate all day long about, what evils MAGA has brought to the Republican Party. But the one thing that I think they were really successful at is making a very large tent for people to come in and feel comfortable to vote. Now, we can argue about who those people are, and maybe they shouldn't have been in the tent.
Sure.
But the reality is they won elections because of it. And they put themselves in a position to create policy and affect our lives.
And my issue with the Democratic Party has always been it's about purity tests now. You either believe everything or get out of here.
And that's where I was kind of getting at. There's got to be room for moderate candidates. There's got to be room for centrists. It can't be a bad thing to be a centrist. There's going to be okay. It's going to be okay for, and I know I've talked about this before, and he was very clear that if everybody in your party agrees on everything in lockstep, you don't have a party that's going to win an election.
Yeah. You also don't. You're now doing audio only, but we'll figure out what's going on. But yeah, no, you're right about that. You don't have a party at that point. You almost have a cult. In my opinion.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Oh, it's okay. We can people listen anyway. But yeah, that's that. I think that is it. You can't just be. You have to have a challenge to. You have to challenge your ideas, because that's how you sharpen them. You could learn something different, or like here's an example. I make a point of listening to the briefings with Hegseth and with the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and I've been actually, Andy, following this stuff since I remember the press conference after we bombed Libya with Reagan as president, and I was like 10 years old or something. But I've always been interested, and I have never.
Did they cut it to G.I. Joe when that happened? Why are we?
No, I've always been fascinated. Also, that's also the and the Def Leppard song "Gods of War." They use a bit of Reagan's speech after that at the end of it. But anyway, but I've never, listening to those briefings for all of my life across however many presidents, like Hegseth taking time out of every one of his speech to talk about what an amazing leader and strong leader that Donald Trump is. I've never heard that before. I never heard Rumsfeld talk about, and only because of the strong, brave leadership of George W. Bush are we here right now. It's so clear that when these people speak, they're speaking to an audience of one, and that's terrifying to me because it's not the way it's supposed to be. I believe we're going to persevere better than you do. I don't think it's going to take decades to fix. I think it'll take about as long as it takes to break it for it to fix it. But
So 10 years.
no, I mean, I don't think he started really breaking anything up other than the last 9 months. Because, like you said, even in his first term, he had adults in the room that were preventing him from breaking anything.
Most of
That's
which
why those
fired.
guys all got fired.
Yeah. Yeah. Catch me on a different day, and I might feel a little bit more positive about things, or it just depends. Right now, it's just weighing heavily, and it's just the sheer lunacy. And part of it is this unending weird praise that they have to heap on our president they being cabinet members at every turn. I've watched a couple of cabinet meetings, and it's not about reporting on what your department's doing or what progress you've made. It is literally all about tickling this old man's balls for as long as they can do it without taking a breath, which is a skill in the adult industry, but it should not be a skill that's necessary for being the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of
Good
Labor.
on an anniversary.
I mean, yes, there are places. There's a time and a place for everything.
There's time and place for ball tickling.
To
every season, Andy.
But it happened yesterday. They are literally trying. RFK Jr., who is just as advocated and out there as Trump seems to be, despite the fact that he works out in blue jeans. That's a thing that I think people are actually doing now. It's going to catch on. It's a trend. Was trying to defend this idea that our president doesn't understand math, which, as a person who was in construction, you'd think they would at some point in their lives.
You're talking about the 600% thing?
Yeah, you're trying to. This was the actual quote was, if you have a product and it's $100 and it goes up to $600, that's a 600% increase. Hey, that's wrong. It's a 500% increase, but let's stop there. And then similarly, if you go from $600 to $100, that's a 600% decrease. No, it's an 83% decrease. And we can't agree on basic math. This isn't even getting into your world of I have a film degree. I don't have to know this. This is basic shit that they teach fourth graders. And the fact that nobody is willing to say, hey, could we just get the numbers right instead of you just making shit up? Is just it's a symptom of the problem that nobody's willing to question anything that comes out of this guy's mouth ever.
It's so the
you have a bunch of grown men wearing shoes that don't fit.
It's so the emperor's new clothes, and it's like we learned nothing from that. Maybe we need to bring back fables and fairy tales and stuff, because we're not learning.
What kids don't do in school anymore. They don't have to go to the library and watch film strips. The world was a better place when you had to go to the library and watch film strips.
You know what you kids need? You need more microfiche in your life.
You need to go backwards about 7 generations of technology and be fascinated when the record doesn't line up with the film strip. Because sometimes you don't get audio on the film strip.
That's true. That's true.
Kids today don't know about Billy Goat Gruff.
We need an entire episode dedicated to Billy Goat Gruff. I do want to end on a positive note. And as oftentimes in my life, Andy, that positive note is Connie Britton.
Mrs. Coach Tammy Taylor?
Coach Tammy Taylor. Connie Britton is just elegant and beautiful and gorgeous. Even when she plays kind of an unlikable character like she is in Rooster. Like,
would you say luminary? I would say she's luminary.
Oh, I do agree with that. But she's kind of not likable in Rooster. But I wanted to talk about, like, we're caught up on the show yesterday, and it was kind of sad. Like, Jessica had been out of town, so I think we watched 3 episodes in a row. And then when it was the next suggestion was a different show altogether, we were like, oh, we must be caught up. What I like about the show is it's insightful. It's also breezy, and it's in some ways it's kind of a show about nothing. Like, it's such a slice of life kind of show where plot doesn't really carry over, but just the ride is fun. It's pitch perfect in its casting. I really love the relationship Steve Carell was having with the assistant, and I know where they're going with the show, which is why that had to end. But I don't know, man. You turned me onto it, and I just got to say, it's just another example of Bill Lawrence knowing how to write for me. I don't know if he writes for everybody else the way but he writes for me perfectly.
Well, I can tell you this: if you're going to watch Rooster, come for Steve Carell, but stay for John C. McGinn, because even though he's only in like 5 minutes an episode, he's the show. He is everything you want out of a John C. McGinley character. I think it's probably just him. He just shows up and is John C. McGinley as provost or whatever his title is at the university, or as chief of medicine, or as whatever. But it's if Perry Cox had gone into academia, that's what you would have got. To my point, my tribute today is to Janitor being on the last episode of Scrubs. But yeah, Rooster's a fantastic show. It is not heavy. It does deal with some adult issues, like, divorce and the depression that comes with divorce and getting on with your life. In a lot of the way that Shrinking did, if you watch this and you're a fan of Shrinking, there's a lot of similar tones to that show, but they're both Bill Lawrence creations, so that makes sense. It also has what I think is a common theme throughout a lot of the Bill Lawrence shows, the normal guy, Steve Carell at this point, dealing with weirdness all around him and trying to stay normal in the space of that weirdness. So it's not even a fish out of water. It's just kind of the fish trying to get back in the water or trying to find the water.
I definitely want to recommend it. And I want to get one last thing from you, just real quick. Two of the best episodes of Scrubs have come in this reboot. The penultimate episode, the episode right before the finale, where Dr. Cox gets his diagnosis, that was such a gut punch moment that I was absolutely in tears when he says, "I tried to save you from that." I mean, talk to me a little bit about, you and I love that show more than most. Where were you through that whole?
I will tell you that it threw me because they tried to set it up a couple of times when Cox asked JD to pray with him, and then went full Perry Cox. And so when they went down that path one more time, I was like, he's just going to step him up again, but he didn't. The beat changed, and it was reminiscent of Harry, where do you think we are? And I'm not going to quote which episode that was, but from the original run, but it was that same beat, that same emotional tone. One of the things that I love about Scrubs, that I think we share in our love about Scrubs, is this idea that it is this slice of life, but it's not always happy. It's not always sad. And sometimes you're dealing with all of that in the same moment. Yeah. And I've rarely seen something on screen, whether it's a movie or a TV show, that handles that combination of what life is really like as well as Scrubs does when it's at its best.
And I think it's always about Cox teaching JD, and JD being so offended that he picked Park to be his doctor. And it didn't dawn on him until the end that it's because it was one more time of Cox trying to save JD from having to go through that with him. To me, I think also what I like about it is I think Bill Lawrence writes male characters, I think, that connect with you and I. And that's not always popular. There's nothing toxically male about them, but yet there are still very much masculine characters who also struggle with how to relate to other men. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to see, particularly with where we're heading as a society.
I don't think anybody would accuse Roy Kent of being woke.
No. Although he's rumored to be the new 007, and I'd be here for it.
Brett Goldstein, I have yet to see, and again, I know why you checked out of Shrinking. When he reappears in that show, it redeems everything.
I'm going to give it a shot again over the summer.
They also, the plot line that you did not care for resolves itself in a positive way.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it another shot.
But yeah, Brett Goldstein is a revelation. And if you get nothing else out of 4 seasons, I guess now, like Ted Lasso, being able to watch Brett Goldstein fully be Brett Goldstein is pretty.
It's really, yeah. Well, that is going to wrap us up. Thanks so much for everybody for joining with us. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back Monday, hopefully after a couple more Astros wins, at least a couple more Aggie wins, a couple more Longhorn wins, and a democracy still intact. We can have all of those things. We are going to the movies this weekend, so I'm not sure what we're seeing, but Jessica's like, I just need to go to the movies. And Andy, I'm not even sure where we're going because the Alamo's different now, but I'll let you know.
I'll throw one thing out there also. If you're not aware, Saturday Night Live has launched a UK version. Those episodes are available on Peacock.
How is it?
Worth watching.
Okay.
It's you're not going to know anybody on the show outside of Tina Fey hosted the first episode. They're not household names, but it's really, really well done. And if you like British humor, it's a little bit more dry. And they can say the C word and the F word.
Ooh, see, I'm here for it. I did like that Tina Fey had a jacket that said 1 on it on her last SNL appearance because she was in the
Yes.
One-Timers Club for SNL UK. All right, we're going to stay in Texas for our next episode, but we will be back on Monday. This has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation, with Andy, with Jim. Everybody, have a great weekend. And you know what? Just be kind to one another because it kind of sucks out there.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.